Hey everyone, in this video, as part of our Dangerous Persuasion Weapon series, I want to cover threats and intimidation. That is, how does one side bully the other in terms of persuasion, what is the effect that it has, how do you defend against it, and if you really need to, how do you use it yourself? That's what we're going to cover. So what are threats, intimidation, and pressure? These are a set of techniques that can consist of body language, aggressive words, or even actual threats, conditional threats, just to make the other person be on the defensive. They are usually used as a sign of aggression. The other person wants to put you on the defensive. And in many cases, they don't even push the negotiation forward in any way. They are just used to subjugate the other person and for the effect that it has on the person. And this is a great segue to our first insight, which is, how does intimidation actually work? What is the effect that it has on you psychologically? And it can be summarized as being on the defensive. What I mean by this is the following. In a neutral state, you are agile, you are nimble, you are going to ask for some things, maybe you make some concessions, but it's balanced. But what happens is, when you are on the defensive, you become more conservative. In a way, you literally become afraid. What happens is, you are not going to have the courage to be more aggressive, to stand up for yourself, to ask for what you need. You are just going to be more conservative and more defensive overall. And this is exactly what pressure or threats actually cause. It causes an effect where the other side is more nimble and is more active, while you are just going to be defensive and reactive. And this effect is especially dangerous if you need the other side, because what happens is you don't have an option. You can't just say, this is intolerable and I'm out of here. If the other person keeps pressuring you and intimidating you, you are going to make more and more concessions and they're going to win more and more, and you have no way out. It's important to note that pressure and intimidation can usually be used by two different types of people. So what happens is, either they are used by shrewd negotiators who are reasonable, or by complete dominants or complete psychopaths, if you want to call them that, who are willing to blow up a negotiation if they don't get everything they want. So let's cover both. First of all, a shrewd negotiator can use pressure or intimidation just as a tactic to try and gain a little bit of an edge, but if you resist, then it's fine. So it may be someone who is willing to take a discount, for example, but they look you in the eyes with very intense eye contact in a serious voice, and they tell you there's nothing that can be done. And they expect you to be intimidated by their body language, for example. Or they talk in a very assertive tone of voice, and they tell you there's nothing that we can do. And they expect you to react to that. So you can be pressured by this type of attitude or statement, but if you decide to politely say, I'm not going to be affected by it and I still need a discount, then they're going to be reasonable. So that's the first type. They use pressure or intimidation just to get an edge, especially if they think that the other side is going to react to it. The second type, however, is a completely different topic. If it's a very aggressive negotiator, a dominant, so in this case, these people are very emotional. They're not using pressure or intimidation for the actual negotiation, they just want to subjugate you. They want to win at all costs, and they want to show that you lose at all costs. And these people are a lot harder to negotiate with, because in many cases, they really need every single thing. They make no concessions, and they want you to suffer every step of the way. That's actually a prerequisite for them to have a successful negotiation. So you can't have a fair negotiation where both sides win, because you losing and you sacrificing something, them getting their pound of flesh, is something that's actually required. And this is a completely different scenario, because in these cases, if you do resist the intimidation and the pressure, then the person is just going to blow up the negotiation. They tell you something like, hey, from now on, we expect this to be half the price, and we don't want any complaints, period. And if you resist it, even if politely, they'll just say, okay, then we're going to leave. So this is a completely different type of negotiation. I would argue that it's not even a negotiation, it's just abuse. You are in a situation where they have to abuse you at all costs, and if you don't accept that abuse, they're going to leave the situation. And this brings us to the first dilemma, which is, should you defend yourself against the person or not? So what I would say is, first of all, try and identify which type of person you're dealing with. And this is going to be very obvious because people who are shrewd negotiators use pressure in a very select manner. They try and pressure you a little bit, they try and use a more breaking tone of voice or eye contact, but they're still reasonable. But when someone is a hardcore dominant, that's going to be obvious. They're going to be very unhinged. They curse, they insult, they threaten, they act like the place is theirs, and they really don't care. And this type of behavior is very easily detectable. So what you need to realize is, if it's a shrewd negotiator, then you can just defend against the pressure, and we'll take a look at how in a minute. But if it is a person who is unreasonable, then usually you only have one of two choices. Either you're willing to blow up the negotiation, to stand up for yourself, or you have to accede to every single one of their demands to keep the relationship. Usually, there is no middle ground here. And this brings us to the point of how to defend against pressure, intimidation, and threats. And the technique is only one, and it's very simple at its core, which is you have to be more intimidating or put more pressure than them. So what happens is the following. Let's say that someone is trying to apply pressure by using a breaking tone of voice and intense eye contact. What's going to happen is that you may break, because you break the eye contact. You think they're too intimidating, and immediately you stop the eye contact because you're afraid. What you have to do instead is to look them in the eyes and last longer than them. You have to show that you are not going to be intimidated by the person because you are even more intimidating. And this can be done with behavior or even with words. So you can use a serious tone of voice, such as saying, "I'm sorry, but no thanks." And usually, this type of voice breaks at the end. So it's almost like you're not finishing the last syllable. You're saying, "I'm very sorry, but no." It's almost like it's breaking at the end. You see, this is the type of tonality that characterizes someone with power. So what you do is you can use this tonality against the person. So when they say, "We really need this discount, period," you tell them, "I'm very sorry, but there's no discount, period." So when they're trying to intimidate you or to put pressure, you have to show that you're even more intimidating or that you put even more pressure. Because remember, the only effect that intimidation has is to put you on the defensive. And the other side can see it, okay? When they put you on the defensive, they feel more powerful because of the effect that it has on you. So if it never has that effect in the first place, they don't win. They don't put you on the defensive. You are still proactive and you are not in a reactive manner. And usually, this will be represented in terms of tension. That is, the other side is going to create tension through this eye contact, statements, or whatever it is. And what you want to do is, you don't want to kill the tension. Even if your brain is telling you to do it, you hold the tension and you let the tension go to them. Because of this, you are never effective and you are never on the defensive. And the next topic is, how do you actually leverage pressure, intimidation, or threats? So what I do, for example, is I set a clear line. I will use a little bit of pressure or even a little bit of intimidation in select cases when the person is too lazy or too relaxed and they really need to take action. And usually I do it for a good purpose. It's almost like you need to buy this so that your life is better, or you need to do this so that your life is better. But resorting to actual threats or ultimatums is taking it one step too far, because you actually poison the relationship. So what you want to show is, you want to show that you don't tolerate laziness or low-level behavior, and you are putting pressure in those cases, but you don't take it too far. So if I have a prospect that's interested and they're almost about to buy, but they still haven't done it, then I may put a little bit of pressure. I may ask, "Hey, you already told me that you want this, you've already told me that you have the financial capability, and you've already told me that you're interested. So what's the problem here?" So I may put a little bit of pressure here and there. And it's also important to state that by only using it a few times, it becomes more powerful. Because what happens is it contrasts with your behavior. So if you're the type of person who is always putting pressure and is always intimidating, then sure, you are going to look tough, but it's not going to seem so special when you do it. It's just another day, and you can even intimidate a lot of people. But if you are a person who is more reasonable, but then at select occasions you really put the pressure, it's going to seem almost out of character. But because of it, it has a much bigger effect. So to summarize, threats, pressure, and intimidation all work by putting the person on the defensive. You don't necessarily gain anything, you just make the person more conservative. They don't fight for themselves, they don't ask for things that they could ask, and so on. It's usually leveraged by two types of people, either shrewd negotiators who just want to gain a little bit of an edge and put a little bit of pressure, but if you resist it, then it's okay, and they continue with other techniques, but it's also used by hardcore dominants that really want to make you bleed. And in these cases, there is nothing to gain by resisting the pressure, because the whole relationship is about either abusing you or getting out of there. Then you usually defend against pressure by having even more pressure, or by holding even more tension, or being even more intimidated. Because remember, the person knows when they've put you on the defensive, and they know that they won. So what you have to do is you have to show them that they're not going to win. So whatever amount of pressure they try to put on you, you have to show that you can withstand it and put even more pressure on them. So that way, they never put you on the defensive and they never win. And if you have to use pressure or intimidation yourself, I would recommend that you never cross the threshold of actual intimidation or threats. Just put a little bit of pressure at select occasions, when the person really needs to make a move and when you really believe that it's in their best interest, then you can pressure them a little bit. It's pressuring them for a good reason at the end of the day, but never resort to actual threats or ultimatums, because that is going to erode trust and it's going to poison the whole relationship from the beginning. If you've enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing, and don't forget to check out the channel for more persuasion, negotiation, and communication techniques. Thank you so much for watching.